Time to check in with Tom Mulcair, a feature, of course, brought to you by the good folks at Guaranteed Industries, reminding you, heating, cooling, it doesn't matter. Oh, also doesn't matter residential, industrial, commercial, they do it all. Keep your system up to date, install new systems. They're the folks to call. Guaranteed Industries, 514-342-3400. All right, Tom Mulcair is on the line. And Tom, finally, it seems like this break has lasted forever.
It does.
But the National Assembly is finally decided to go back to business. What can we expect?
Well, it's interesting because, the standard stuff will be on the table. There's going to be a big union negotiation, and there's a rallying going on right now amongst the unions to put on a full court press, the type of united front that they used to put on decades ago. So stay tuned. I think that this thing could become very heated very quickly. But the most important thing that I've been picking up from several different sources, including over the weekend, I spoke to somebody very close to the CAC at the senior level, and they're saying that Legault is frustrated. And so it's interesting. In just a couple of weeks, he's starting his 6th year in power. And he's not old by any stretch of the imagination, but he's also somebody who knows that his political career is mostly behind him now. He's worried about his legacy. Because if you ask yourself the question, okay, what has he done really well? What are his signature pieces? Well, I think that he'll deserve credit for pretty darn good handling of the pandemic. There were a few glitches, but overall, I think he did well, especially in terms of communications. His overarching success was the creation of a party out of nothing that was indeed a coalition, especially of dissatisfied sovereignists who would never have gone over to the Liberals. He was able to collect that coalition, put it together, and put it on offer and win 2 majorities. That's good, too. That's not something that people are going to talk about down the road. His big signature piece in the Quebec City area was supposed to be this bridge tunnel between the two sides of the St. Lawrence. That fell through. And it looks like he might have actually been fibbing about whether he was ever going to do it. And so he's worried about that right now. He knows he's got a couple of really weak ministers. Think Bernard Drainville. Don't want to be uncharitable to Mr. Drainville, but he's just not doing a good job at education. So that was the name that was actually given in my conversation over the weekend, saying, look, he's going to have to shuffle earlier rather than later. And I found that surprising because you don't usually shuffle early because it's an indication that you might have gotten it wrong yourself. But he is apparently worried about what people will retain of his time in office as premier, and he wants to start getting some stuff done, and he knows that he's got some deadwood in his cabinet. So look for some signals from the people around Legault that he might be getting ready to grease the skids for some of his ministers.
Isn't this interesting, though? You mentioned Bernard Drainville specifically, and we've talked a lot about the failings within the education ministry.
Yeah.
I don't think, Natasha, maybe I'm wrong, I don't think we thought anyone could have been worse than
Jean-François Roberge. No.
But apparently we were wrong.
Yeah.
You were. And he was, Roberge was awful, and Drainville is definitely worse. Look, it's his first year, it's his first summer as a minister. The thing was breaking all over the place. And then he comes back and says, I've got a shortfall of 8,558 teachers, whatever the number was. And then he says, it really wasn't that bad because this happens every year. Well, buddy, you were on holidays. And the only reason we know he was on holidays is because he put out a statement saying that he had to be evacuated from Sardinia because of the wildfires there. Well, what were you doing in Europe when your job is to be the education minister? This is your first year on the job, and the thing is breaking all over the place. And so what was your priority?
Yeah, and I can't help but wonder, Tom, if it was a deliberate move on Legault's part to put Drainville in there, like sort of setting him up for failure.
Well, if he's setting him up for failure, he might also be setting him up to walk back over to the PQ and say, well, I've grown tired of this Legault guy, and I've always been a sovereignist. I'm going back to my home team. That could happen as well, because, of course, Drainville's not going to admit that he's the problem. He's going to say that the premier's the problem. So all that has to be taken into account. But if Legault believes in education. One of the things he did right was this 4-year-old kindergarten. You start kindergarten at 4 years old, and you can do the second year of kindergarten. That was really smart because there's a big difference between early childhood education and childcare. It's not taking anything away from the people who work so hard to help our kids in the daycare centers. But it's not the same thing. I think anybody who knows anything about education will admit that. This is something that Legault, as a former education minister, believed in. He pushed hard for. Now, what was one of the first things that Drainville said? Oh, well, I have to be honest with you. I'm not going to BS you. It's not going to happen. We don't have enough resources, not enough teachers. I'm not sure that was Drainville working on his own. So he was taking away from one of the signature pieces that Legault had actually accomplished.
So I want to go on. I know we're going to talk about Marwa Risky in a second. So we're talking leaders. We've heard from a variety of different people. Fred Beauchemin was on the air last week. Help me out here, Tom. Christine Labrie says she's not only ready to be co-spokesperson of Quebec Solidaire, she's ready to be premier. What do we know about this person?
Well,
she's ambitious.
Now we know she's got a lot of ambition. Exactly. She's a very, very good politician. And, she held on to her seat after a very tough battle. She's telegenic, articulate, a good fighter. But basically, she's signaling also that she believes that co-porte-parole actually means something. If I were Gabrielle Nadeau-Dubois, I'd start being a little bit concerned. Gabrielle Nadeau-Dubois is a firm believer in his own PR, but he hasn't been setting the world on fire. He did win a master stroke of a by-election in St. Henry St. Anne. He took that away from the Libs. And by the way, the guy who won there for them is just one of the strongest members of the National Assembly, never mind the Quebec Solidaire caucus. I mean, Clichy-Rouard is that type of MNA. He's outstanding. He's got tons of personality. He's smart, and he's got incredible people skills. So the eye on him. But with regard to GND, I do think that people are starting to realize, okay, leader of the student movement, the Carré Rouge and all that stuff, and he talks as if the world should stop now that he's here, but nobody's really paying that much attention. So I think that there might be a bit of a shuffle coming also at Quebec Solidaire.
Okay. All right, let's move on to Marwa then. So Marwa Risky has been touted. People are saying, will you run? She has said she has some interest, and yet we know she just had a child. I think Gabriel's like a year and a half old now, and she would like to have a second child. So what do you think is happening here behind the scenes?
I think that she realizes that she's got a unique chance in her career, because a career is like a carousel. It moves around and around, and sometimes it gets to the gate, and you either take the gate or you're on the carousel for another long time without being given that chance. She's also got unbelievable, unique political skills.
She does.
She is exceptional. And I don't think that she's ever let that go to her head. She's just very determined, hardworking, and has these skills. What's going to happen in the Quebec Liberal Party? I mean, you've got this team of old-timers out there who are, out rubbing the thing and trying to say, okay, we're going to wait a whole long time before we bring somebody else in. I think that the smartest move would have been to not have Marc Tanguay there and to have Marwa Risky there. And by the way, caucus could still decide that, because Tanguay is still not doing a very good job. And if you let her go at Legault, first of all, his reaction to women asking strong questions of him has always been very complicated. He's not comfortable with it, and his reactions sometimes, betray his age and his background. So I think that she would have just been outstanding, and let her, test drive this thing and let everybody get used to her, because the wider public does not know Marwa Risky, but she's just outstanding. It must be the toughest choice, that she's ever going to have to make, and these are choices that especially women in politics are going to be called upon to make. So just let her and Greg figure this out for themselves and for what's best for them and for the family. But she's absolutely outstanding. I couldn't agree more. Tom,
we have to wrap up. Does it hurt the Liberal Party more and more to have no one in that role? And
it's unbelievable. It's the ultimate self-inflicted wound. I've never seen a political party do this to themselves. The thinking, because I talk to them, I know most of them, and so don't you think it'd be a good idea to have a leader? And well, the answer is, no, you don't understand. No, we would burn that person if we brought them in too early. We have to create, some sort of honeymoon, and but I'm sort of going, but if there's nothing left of the party. So the piece that I wrote in the Gazette last week, and we've talked about it, the Jean Talon riding by-election, I think that the Liberals are going to do better than, for example, the PQ is always spinning the same line, the Liberals are now at 5% amongst Francophone voters. Well, there's not much more Francophone riding in Quebec than Jean Talon in Quebec City. And I'm thinking that the Liberals, they've got a really good candidate, by the way. I have a feeling that they're going to be able to get at least 15 or 20%, and it's going to be divided up. That'll be an honorable showing. I don't think that they have a chance of really winning it, but it'll be an honorable showing in a very large field of candidates. And then people will stop repeating over and over again that the Liberals are dead. But if the Liberals don't want to be dead, it would really be a good idea for them to stop listening to that analysis that says, oh, no, the longer we wait, the better it is, and realize that they are killing their own party and they better get a leader fast.
Tom Mulcair. Tom, thank you so much. Appreciate it. We'll
Thanks,
talk to you
Tom.
later in the
Thank
week.
you. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.